Welcome to the Alpbulan channel, a channel about the African man and the African woman. In today's episode we are focusing on the great King Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu was born in 1787 24 September and died in 1828, also known as Shaka the Zulu. Zulu and Sijidai Kasensa Ngakana, was the king of the Zulu kingdom from 1816 to 1828. One of the most influential monarchs of the Zulu, he ordered wide-reaching reforms that reorganized the military into a formidable force. King Shaka was born in the lunar month of Unchalaikazi, July, in the year 1787, in Mthanjanani, KwaZulu-Natal Province, South Africa. The son of the Zulu king Sentankakana Kajama, he was spurned as an illegitimate son. Shaka spent part of his childhood in his mother's settlements, where he was initiated into an Ibutho Lempi, fighting unit or regiment, serving as a warrior under Nkosi Dingiswayo. King Shaka further refined the Ibutho military system with the Mthethwa Paramountsea's support over the next several years. He forged alliances with his smaller neighbors to counter Ndwandwe raids from the north. The initial Zulu maneuvers were primarily defensive, as King Shaka preferred to apply pressure diplomatically, with an occasional strategic assassinations. His reforms of local society built on existing structures. Although he preferred social and propagandistic political methods, he also engaged in a number of battles. King Shaka's reign coincided with the start of the Mfecane or Difakon, upheaval or crushing, a period of devastating warfare and chaos in southern Africa between 1815 and 1840 that depopulated the region. His role in the Mfecane or Difakon is highly controversial. He was ultimately assassinated by his half-brothers, King Dingani and Prince Maitlangana and Bafakasathayi. The early life of King Shaka. He was born to the reigning Zulu king. He was the eldest of many sons, but was considered to be a bastard child and was sent away to live with his mother's tribe, known as the Alageni, leaving his half-brother to rule the Zulu kingdom. At the time, the Zulu were a regional tribe relying on pastoral livestock, sorghum, and milk. When Shaka reached a suitable age, he and his mother were sent to the Mthethwa clan, the most powerful regional tribe. There, he matured, and served as a warrior under Job, and then for Dingiswayo, a respected warrior and chief of the clan. When Nkosi Dingiswayo discovered Shaka was royalty, he put him in charge of a regiment, helping to develop Shaka's military tactics and strategy. After Nkosi's wide, the king of the Ndwandwe, Nsumalo, nation, murdered Dingiswayo, Shaka sought to avenge his death. During that encounter, Zwides, Ntombezi, a Sangoma, was killed by Shaka. Shaka chose a particularly gruesome revenge on her by locking her in a house with jackals or hyenas inside. They devoured her, and in the morning, Shaka burned the house to the ground. Shaka continued his pursuit of Zwide. It was not until around 1825 that the two military leaders met in the vicinity of Pongola, near the present-day border of Mpumalanga, a province of South Africa. Shaka was victorious in battle, although his forces sustained heavy casualties, including his military commander, Ngabhozi Ovela Ntabeni. The Ndwandwe Zulu War. Zulu Empire under Shaka, 1816 to 1828, in present-day South Africa. The rise of the Zulu Empire under Shaka forced other chiefdoms and clans to flee across a wide area of southern Africa. Clans fleeing the Zulu war zone included the Sa Shangani, Zwanshandaba, Ndeb, Lubi, Ngwane, Baka, Zatsho, and Mfengu. A number of tribes fled to the lands of King Faku of the Amampondo Kingdom, King Ngubenkyuka of Abathambio Kingdom and King Hinsa of the Amax-Hosa Kingdom. They were assimilated into the Amampondo, Abathambio, and Amax-Hosa cultural ways of life and lived under the protection of the Mbondos, Thambio and Kosas. As Shaka became more respected by his people, he was able to spread his ideas along with greater ease. Using his background as a soldier, Shaka taught the Zulus that the most effective way of gaining power quickly was by conquering and controlling other tribes. His teachings greatly influenced the social outlook of the Zulus. The Zulu tribe soon developed a warrior outlook, which Shaka used to his advantage. Shaka's hegemony was primarily based on military might, smashing rivals and incorporating scattered remnants into his own army. He supplemented this with a mixture of diplomacy and patronage, incorporating friendly chieftains, including Zilandlo of the Mkais, Job of the Sithole, and Mathabane of the Thulai. These people were never defeated in battle by the Zulus, they did not have to be. Shaka won them over with subtler tactics, such as patronage and reward. As for the ruling of Quabe, they began reinventing their genealogies to give the impression that Quabe and Zulu were closely related, i.e. as Nguni, in the past. In this way, a greater sense of cohesion was created, though it never became complete, as subsequent civil wars attest. Shaka still recognized Dingiswayo and his larger Mthethwa clan as overlord after he returned to the Zulu land, but, some years later, Dingiswayo was ambushed by Zwide's Ndwandwe and killed. There is no evidence to suggest that Shaka betrayed Dingiswayo. The Zulu people had to retreat before several Ndwandwe incursions. The Ndwandwe was clearly the most aggressive grouping in the sub-region. Shaka was able to form an alliance with the leaders of the Mthethwa peoples and was able to establish himself amongst the Quabe, after Fakathwayo was overthrown with relative ease. With Quabe, Lubi, and Guy's support, Shaka was finally able to summon a force capable of resisting the Ndwandwe of the Nsumalo clan. Shaka's first major battle against Zwide, of the Ndwandwe, was the Battle of Gokli Hill, on the Mfalazai River. Shaka's troops maintained a strong position on the crest of the hill. A frontal assault by their opponents failed to dislodge them, and Shaka sealed the victory by sending his reserve forces in a sweep around the hill to attack the enemy's rear. Losses were high overall, but the efficiency of the new Shakan innovations was proven. It is probable that, over time, the Zulus were able to hone and improve their encirclement tactics. Another decisive battle eventually took place on the Mite-Latuz River, at the confluence with the Mvuzane stream. In the two-day running battle, the Zulus inflicted a resounding defeat on their opponents. Shaka then led a fresh reserve some 110 kilometers, 70 miles, to the royal kraal of Zwide, ruler of the Ndwandwe, and destroyed it. Zwide himself escaped with a handful of followers before falling afoul of a chieftain named Mjanji, ruler of a Babalo clan. He died in mysterious circumstances soon afterwards. Zwide's general, Sa Shangani, of the Shangaan, moved north towards what is now Mozambique to inflict further damage on less resistant foes and take advantage of slaving opportunities, obliging Portuguese traders to pay tribute. Shaka later had to contend again with Zwide's son, Sekanyan. Shaka granted permission to Europeans to enter Zulu territory on rare occasions. Social and military revolution. Some older histories have doubted the military and social innovations customarily attributed to Shaka, denying them outright, or attributing them variously to European influences. More modern researchers argue that such explanations fall short, and that the general Zulu culture, which included other tribes and clans, contained a number of practices that Shaka could have drawn on to fulfill his objectives, whether in raiding, conquest or hegemony. Shaka's weapons changes. Shaka is often said to have been dissatisfied with the long-throwing assegai, and is credited with having introduced a new variant of the weapon, the ikwe, a short stabbing spear with a long, broad, sword-like spearhead. Although he is credited with introducing the ilkwe to his people, Shaka likely did not invent it himself. He most likely outsourced it from Enzima, who later had a feud with him because he did not want to pay for the spears. According to Zulu scholar John Laband, Shaka insisted that his warriors train with the weapon, which gave them a terrifying advantage over opponents who clung to the traditional practice of throwing their spears and avoiding hand-to-hand conflict. The throwing spear was not discarded, but used as an initial missile weapon before close contact with the enemy, when the shorter stabbing spear was used in hand-to-hand combat. It is also supposed that Shaka introduced a larger, heavier version of the Nguni shield. Furthermore, it is believed that he taught his warriors how to use the shield's left side to hook the enemy's shield to the right, exposing the enemy's ribs for a fatal spear stab. In Shaka's time, these cowhide shields were supplied by the king, and they remained the king's property. Different colored shields distinguished different Amabutho within Shaka's army. Some had black shields, others used white shields with black spots, and some had white shields with brown spots, while others used pure brown or white shields. Bullhorn formation. Most historians credit Shaka with initial development of the famous bullhorn formation. It was composed of 3 elements. The main force, the chest, closed with the enemy impi and pinned it in position, engaging in melee combat. The warriors who formed the chest were senior veterans. While the enemy impi was pinned by the chest, the horns would flank the impi from both sides and encircle it. In conjunction with the chest they would then destroy the trapped force. The warriors who formed the horns were young and fast juniors. The loins, a large reserve, was hidden, seated, behind the chest with their backs to the battle, for the sake of them not losing any confidence. The loins would be committed wherever the enemy impi threatened to break out of the encirclement. Bullhorn formation. Most historians credit Shaka with initial development of the famous bullhorn formation. It was composed of 3 elements. The main force, the chest, closed with the enemy impi and pinned it in position, engaging in melee combat. The warriors who formed the chest were senior veterans. While the enemy impi was pinned by the chest, the horns would flank the impi from both sides and encircle it. In conjunction with the chest they would then destroy the trapped force. The warriors who formed the horns were young and fast juniors. The loins, a large reserve, was hidden, seated, behind the chest with their backs to the battle, for the sake of them not losing any confidence. The loins would be committed wherever the enemy impi threatened to break out of the encirclement. Dinguni and Maitlangana, Shaka's half-brothers, appeared to have made at least 2 attempts to assassinate Shaka before they succeeded, with support from the Bondo elements and some disaffected Isa Yendane. Had made enough NMNG his own people to hasten his demise came relatively quickly after the death of his mother, Nandi, in October 1827 and the devastation caused by Shaka's subsequent erratic behavior. According to Donald Morris, Shaka ordered that no crops should be planted during the following year of mourning. No milk, the basis of the Zulu diet at the time, was to be used, and any woman who became pregnant was to be killed along with her husband. At least 7,000 people who were deemed to be insufficiently grief-stricken were executed. Although the killing was not restricted to humans, cows were slaughtered so that their calves would know what losing a mother felt like. Shaka was killed by 3 assassins sometime in 1828. September is the most frequently cited date, when almost all available Zulu manpower had been sent on yet another mass sweep to the north. This left the royal kraal critically lacking in protection. It was all the conspirators needed. An Iyanduna named Mbapa created a diversion, and Dinguni and Maitlangana struck the fatal blows. Shaka's corpse was dumped by his assassins in an empty grain pit, which was then filled with stones and mud. The exact location is unknown. A monument was built at one alleged site. Historian Donald Morris holds that the true site is somewhere on Kuur Street in the village of Stanger, in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Dinguni assumed power and embarked on an extensive purge of pro-Shaka elements and chieftains, over the course of several years, in order to secure his position. The initial problem Dinguni faced was maintaining the loyalty of the Zulu fighting regiments. He set up his main residence at Ngungundlovu and established his authority over the Zulu kingdom. Dinguni ruled for some 12 years, during which time he fought, disastrously, against the Voortrekkers, and against another half-brother, Mpande, who, with Boer and British support, took over the Zulu leadership in 1840, ruling for some 30 years. Thank you for watching. Please support the channel by subscribing, and don't forget to share with your friend. Don't also forget to leave a comment.